When was the last time you saw an actual cigarette lighter? Look at that! Ooh, I'm doing my nervous face. I was just watching my off-road pages then, and it told me my pitch and roll angles. I'm not going to tell you what they were, but all I'm going to say is that's all my underpants will take for today. Thank you very much. This car makes absolutely no sense at all. It's expensive, thirsty, uncomfortable, and utterly, utterly unmistakable. It is, of course, the iconic Jeep Wrangler. And I'm going to explain why, even though this is one of the silliest cars money can buy, why so many people absolutely love it, including me. The archetypal Wrangler is unique and somewhat of an evolutionary shark, continuing essentially the same recipe introduced by the YJ in the mid-80s, and arguably its spiritual successor, the 1941 Willys. While it's certainly changed with the times in terms of tech and safety, what you're looking at here is the same formula of a ladder chassis, dual live axles, 4x4 transmission, hardcore off-roader. A legacy that's lasted more than 80 years. There are other models that can offer a similar mechanical layout and off-road ability, such as the Toyota Land Cruiser 70 Series, Mercedes G-Class, Ineos Grenadier, and yes, even the Suzuki Jimny has something in common. And we simply must give a mention to its Indian doppelganger Mahindra Thar. That's on the way to Australia as an EV. But there will only ever be one Jeep Wrangler. The range was updated in 2024, which brought the entry-level price down by about $5,000. That makes the cost of the entry Sport S around about $76,000. Above that, there's the Overland 4-door for about $85,000, and above that, there's the Rubicon 4-door for closer to $90,000. But this is the Rubicon, as you can see, but it is the 2-door version. It'll cost you about $84,000, and it's my favorite. In terms of options, believe it or not, there's actually not many you can add to your Wrangler. One option this has is, I think it's pronounced Zenith silver paint, which will cost you about $1,500. For the 4-doors, you can get a power-operated canvas roof, but you can't get that on the 2-door. But what you can get is a massive range of literally hundreds of accessories. One of my favorites for this, you can get the Sunrider roof, which replaces the pop-out Targa roof with a manual folding canvas top. Compressor integrated to the back door, a dog kennel, skid plates, rock plates, body decals, literally you name it, you can get it for the Wrangler. All new Jeep models get a 5-year warranty, which is about average, but is limited to just 100,000 kilometers, which is about the shortest in the market. Cap price servicing is available, but Jeep has not yet updated the costs for the updated 4-cylinder Wrangler. For comparison, the discontinued 4-cylinder turbo diesel costs $499 per visit, while the V6 petrol is $399 for each scheduled maintenance visit. Regardless of what the Wrangler does, good or bad, the look of it is what people buy this car for a lot of the time. It looks absolutely fantastic and like nothing else on the road. This is the 2-door, which I think proportionally works a lot better than the 4-door, personally. And it also has advantages when it comes to off-road as well, which we'll talk about in car. But one of its other amazing features is this. This is a little tool pouch that comes included in the cost of the Rubicon, and it's for removing stuff. There's bolts all over this car, and this kit removes them for things like the roof. That entire roof panel comes off, the doors come off, and even if you're feeling enthusiastic, the windscreen folds down onto the bonnet. It's absolutely ridiculous. I love it, and I don't know of any other vehicle that does it, and it makes this car completely unique. One other thing I love is that when you take those bolts out, there's a special little storage spot in the boot that Jeep has thought about, so you don't lose them or they don't rattle around in the cup holders. And I just love little things like that about this car. It makes it completely standalone. Now, if you want to know what it's like to drive along without the windscreen in a Rubicon, check out the Car Sales Instagram, because I did it yesterday on a 10-degree day and it was still a huge amount of fun. Important stuff to talk about under the bonnet of the Wrangler, but getting there introduces one of its many, many unique features, the Wrangler bonnet latches. It's always been that way. That's how you get under the bonnet of a Wrangler, with a little release just here. But one of the things is there's no release from inside the car. You can get to the underbonnet of a Wrangler from outside, whether it's locked or not. So if someone wants to interfere with your Wrangler engine, they can if they want to. I don't know if that's a good thing or not, but that's the way it's always been. You used to be able to buy the Wrangler with a 3.6 Pentastar V6 petrol engine. But the major thing with the 2024 update was they replaced that engine with a 2-litre turbo 4-cylinder petrol. Now it makes about 200 kilowatts, which is slightly less power than the V6, but the big news is 400 Newton meters is more torque than the V6. Efficiency, about 10 litres per 100 kilometers, which is still thirsty, but an improvement over the V6. And performance is about on par as well. 7 seconds, 0 to 100, which is respectable and no real disadvantage. It does though, it's worth mentioning, it requires 95 octane fuel compared with the old V6, which you could run on, I don't know, chip oil or something. I'm going to be completely honest with you. This is a very easy car to judge on paper, and I was prepared to dislike pretty much everything about it. But you know what I did when I first got in this car? I smiled for a long time. It's absolutely brilliant. I can't explain why I like it so much in here, but it just has such an unbelievable sense of occasion, and it is completely different. I challenge you to get in a Wrangler and not smile and feel kind of happy about whatever you're about to do. It's so cool in here. Ergonomically, not the best car in the world. These seats are relatively comfortable, covered in a nice leather upholstery. It is a bit sort of agricultural or commercial, perhaps at best, in its ergonomics, but it just feels so much fun. Like everything from the switches and the chunkiness of it all and the styling and being able to look out over that big bonnet. I absolutely cannot help but like this car from the second I got in it. Let's look at some of the features you get. So a really nice quality leather wrapped steering wheel, which is heated, as are the seats on a day like today. Very, very welcome. Thank you very much. But you get chunky switches everywhere. You get auxiliary switches for adding equipment, much like you would get in a Ineos Grenadier, although they're up here and a bit more sort of stylized. In here, it's a bit toy-like in its kind of execution and styling. But I don't mind that because this whole thing is like one big Tonka truck anyway. So it feels fun. Everything about it just feels fun. I've got limited storage. 2 cup holders down here, fine, somewhere for your phone. Little net bags on the doors, which aren't very big. A little storage tub here, which is smallish, but one thing I particularly like is it's key lockable, so that if you go and leave the car with all the roof and the doors off, as we've already talked about, you can secure things in there with the ignition key. I've got a real climate control panel, very nice, thank you very much. Lots of functional features like USB A and C, and I even have, when was the last time you saw an actual cigarette lighter in any car? This car is just completely unapologetic about the way it goes about things. I've got reasonably good quality materials everywhere. Go a bit lower down and they get a bit scratchy. But that's okay because this is actually hose out to a degree. You can actually fill it up with dirt and crap and then hose it all out with a jet wash at the end of the day, as long as you've been careful. And then things like real mechanical levers. The gear selector's chunky and huge and mechanical. The four-wheel drive, high and low range activation, that's another really big chunky lever. Real handbrake. This has got one foot in the past in all the right ways. It's full of technology as well, which we'll talk about shortly, but it's also got that lovely balance of the old school and the old world, and it feels like I'm connected to the past and all of those generations of Wranglers that came before it, and even as far back as the Willys Jeep.
As a side note to the driving position, there's no left footrest in the driver's footwell, which is probably a hangover from its left to right-hand drive conversion. Whatever the reason or explanation, it's a bit annoying.
You'll need the special tool I showed you before to take the doors off, to take the back roof section off, and to fold the windscreen, but you don't need any tools at all to lift out the Targa style roof panels. It's just clips here, and once you've released all those, the fiberglass panel lifts out, stows in the boot, and you can basically have convertible motoring fun whatever the weather and whenever you feel like it. But I'm not doing that today because it's cold and windy and probably going to rain. Nice to know you can though. Even though this car has quite a tangible bloodline all the way back to a 1940s vehicle, it has plenty of technology in it as well. And as you'll find in most cars these days, there's a central touchscreen. It's got really great resolution, really nice graphics. And let me take you to this home screen first because I really like it. It's one of the most customizable home screens I've ever seen. So at the moment it's set up to have my phone pairing, radio station I'm listening to, an off-road screen showing me the pitch and roll of the vehicle, and also a climate panel. But over here I've added in a third window. You can add as many as you like, and within there you can add however many widgets you like. For example, I'm going to add in a navigation widget as well, which now pops up there. And if I don't like where it is, I can move that around
to whichever page I like as well. So that is one of the most customizable screens I've ever seen in a vehicle, and it's really easy to do. It's intuitive. I didn't have to sit for hours working it out. So that's my home screen, all sorted. The other page I'm particularly fond of, if you go into Vehicle, Dashboard, that's where we find the off-road pages. Obviously this car is very focused on leaving the sealed path behind, and this is where you'll find all your various bits and pieces talking about what this car can do. That screen there talks about the 3 locking differentials and the anti-roll bar that's disconnectable. We'll have a little look at that later when we're actually off-road. You've got your various auxiliary gauges, and all important in a vehicle like this, if we're going off-road and doing any serious all-terrain action, your pitch and roll. And then finally, you get this elsewhere. It'll go into this mode when you select reverse, but this car does not have a 360-degree camera. It has a front and rear-facing camera. I don't necessarily mind that, and I'll explain why. It's only 2 positions, one forward, one rear. This vehicle is so highly visible when you're sat in the driver's seat, you almost don't need a 360-degree camera. Like, for example, I'm sitting high, the windows drop away dramatically at either side. The rear windows are huge, and I can get a really good impression just looking over my shoulder what's going on. And it's so short, I actually have found myself on several occasions parking really badly because I just completely assumed there was a whole car's length behind me, but there wasn't. I still had about half a car park left behind. So it's really manageable. You don't really need a full 360-degree camera because it is so visible from the driver's position, which I love. You've got lots of applications you can go into here regarding your comfort, lots of multimedia things to do. Even though this vehicle appears to be a bit utilitarian on the outside, it has kept up with the times when it comes to technology. If you could spend hours going through all this, I'm not going to. It does get native navigation, which actually works really, really nicely. And finally, I want to just go over to the driver's instrument cluster because, again, I keep talking about this balance of old and new. And again, you get a really nice example here. 2 proper analog gauges, but then in the middle, you get another nice digital screen, full color, really nice resolution for some various digital displays. Like you get digital speedo, again, more gauges, that transmission indication of what diffs are locked, and even things like your fuel consumption and trip meter. So I like that they haven't tried to go too technical in this vehicle. A lot of people love it because it is old school in many ways. So it must be difficult to strike a balance between that traditional and also the modern to keep everyone happy. You're never going to keep everyone happy, but I think Jeep's done a really good job of looking after as many people as it possibly can and not alienating the fans of the Wrangler.
The rear seats in a 2-door Jeep Wrangler are only marginally more practical than a Porsche 911, so at 6'2", I'm not even going to attempt getting in there. Safety was always a bit of a sore spot for the Wrangler, with just 1 ANCAP star out of a possible 5 awarded to the model in 2019. However, it was later updated with AEB and blind spot monitoring, lifting the rating to 3 stars, which is still not great.
Before you even get into the boot of the Jeep Wrangler, there's another of its unique styling features, the spare wheel on the boot. Other 4x4s do that, but it just certainly makes the look complete of this particular car. Getting into the boot is via a half barn door style, half hatchback style, which is practical, gives you options of getting into the boot. And the advantage of that spare wheel on there frees up lots more space. About 365 litres in the boot here, which is respectable given the size of it overall. And you'll find handy features like 12-volt power sockets, those clever bolt storage holes underneath the boot floor, and some clever tool storage, even a subwoofer in this one because it's got the posh stereo. But if you want more space than that, this is my favourite feature. The rear seats fold, fairly conventional, nothing out of the ordinary about that, but then they also roll forwards, which frees up a completely flat boot floor and 898 litres of space. So for a car that's actually really little more than a 2+2, let's be honest, it actually has a pretty respectable boot as well. But it is time now to address the elephant in the room. The Jeep Wrangler is loved for many, many reasons, but one of those is not the way it drives on the road. Now, I'm not sure if you can hear me over the howl of these. All right, okay, I'm over-exaggerating slightly, but the first thing you notice driving this thing on the road are those 32-inch BF Goodrich all-terrain tyres. Actually, they're a proper off-road tyre. They're not just your average mud and snow. And you don't even need to go out and look at the sidewall to know they're there because You just have to listen to the howl. And if you get down to lower speeds, there's that classic knobbly tyre vibration, which, let's be honest, some people actually quite like. It's like a sense of comfort in the background. The road noise from this thing is quite notable. It has the aerodynamics of a tower block. It starts to make wind noise much above 60 kilometers an hour. You hit a bump in it and the body shimmies and shakes. The steering is extremely low geared, but not particularly heavy. So it's fair to say that the Wrangler has always done the same thing on the road, and that is let you know that it is a twin live axle, hardcore off-road vehicle. It's not to say it's dangerous or really distracting in any way. If anything, it makes you pay attention to driving more than most other vehicles. And I'd say it's actually a bonus. The real thing you have to do in this car is focus on the steering, because it's so low geared and it's quite well damped as well. There's a lot of correction that has to happen the whole time. So you do really need to focus on driving this thing, even at relatively low speeds on the road. But all it requires is an adjustment. You don't have to relearn how to drive. You just need to make a small adjustment in the way that you go about your daily driving on the road. And honestly, it's fine. The one thing I will say about this generation, it is a lot better than previous Wranglers on the road. They have done a lot of work in the damping and the spring settings, and it is so much better. But as I say, it is still very much that hardcore twin live axle off-road nature, and it reminds you about it every single minute of the day you're on the road. And while we're talking about the ways that the new Wrangler is more sophisticated and has really evolved, let's talk about its new engine. So the V6, it was a bit of an old nail. When it first came out 400 years ago, I actually was a big fan of the Pentastar V6, but it really started to show its age in recent years. This now, though, is 2-litre 4-cylinder turbo with 200 kilowatts, 400 newton meters, and it really has sharpened the edge of the Wrangler on road. It's so much more sophisticated, it feels more refined, it doesn't have quite the same nice engine note as a V6, but it's a really good match, way better match than I was expecting for a vehicle like this on the road. For a start, it's quite quick. This car weighs just a shade under 2 tons. And I thought it was going to feel a bit sluggish, but that engine is really quite capable. It's impossible to compare that engine with anything else, because this is the only Stellantis or FCA or whatever you want to call it vehicle we have with that 2-litre turbo in Australia at the moment. I think it's really quite great. I'd like to see it in other Jeeps and other Stellantis vehicles if it's at all possible. But it pulls nicely, it's quite refined, it makes a bit of noise, but yeah, it's seemed to be doing the job admirably on the road. It's bolted to an 8-speed automatic transmission, a conventional torque converter auto, which also does a beautiful job. It's a bit clunky at times. It sometimes feels a little bit lazy and then wakes up and hits you with a big jolty gear change, but otherwise it's so much better tuned for the on-road stuff. But whether that means it's compromising when it gets off-road, we will see. The driving position is not quite as awful as I was expecting. It's kind of upright and a bit utilitarian, but suits this car really, really nicely. I also really like the way the brakes feel. They require a bit more pressure than most vehicles, but that's because most vehicles are over servos and have too much assistance. This is a little bit more real world, and they're very progressive. I know that's going to make a big difference off-road when you really want to be able to modulate and control the brake pressure better, and this will do that really nicely. But I actually really like it on the road as well. Just going over some of these rough parts of the road, it is hilarious. The ride in this thing is just, I mean, the kindest word I can think is classic. It is a classic ride. Yes, it's fairly firm, it feels incredibly durable and rugged, and that's what this car does very well. But yes, you will suffer slightly in the ride quality. You can see it being bucked around. There's no adaptive dampers, it's just good old-fashioned stuff. And let me just throw it at the ultimate test, a level crossing. Look, it just feels like a boat on the waves. It's fine. I know I've always said it, if you have to get used to something, it could have been done better in a car. But really, with what this car promises off-road, that's a happy compromise. Look at that! Now that is one of the reasons I absolutely love the short wheelbase 2-door version of the Wrangler. It has a turning circle of, I'm not making this up, 10 meters dead, 10.0 meters. That is shorter than a Toyota Yaris. It's one of the smallest turning circles you'll find on any car, regardless of its application and format and the segment it competes in. 10 meters, and it makes driving this thing such a hoot on road. Off road, obviously that has a massive advantage, but on road it just is so nimble and easy to maneuver. I absolutely enjoy driving this thing so much. The Wrangler has never been so sophisticated to drive on the road. Actually, that's probably too kind. Sophisticated is not a word you'd use to describe this thing on road, and it is still got to be one of the most compromising vehicles to drive on road this side of a Massey Ferguson. It's about this point I should be saying you should spend your money on, well, anything else pretty much. But what if that sealed road ahead came to an end, and then that unsealed road became slippery, and then that same road went vertical? Well, what then? So I couldn't take a Wrangler for a spin and talk about how it's not the best car in the world on the road and then not take it off-road, because that's really to ignore what this car does best, or at least in my experience, what this car does best. It's got to be just about one of the best off-roaders off the shelf unmodified. So let's talk about what we've got. We've got lots of off-road tricks up our sleeves. That includes high and low range. I'm just in high range at the moment, but I'm going to go into low. I'm not going to lock any of the diffs, just see how we get along with that center diff locked. And remember, I've got those lovely knobbly tires. Okay, all right, Jeep, you're just showing off now. Come on, that is just outrageous. It wasn't even slipping a wheel. See, now I'm doing some nice tight maneuvering off-road. I'm using those front and reverse cameras. Really, really effective. If they're getting a bit covered in crud like they are on a horrible day like today, I can actually hit the little jet wash button on them and clean them off, which is very handy. Right, we're going to head back down. Going to pop on hill descent, work it all out and putting in some minimal steering. And now that steering, which on the road is very low geared and takes a lot of turns to get it to do anything, now makes all the sense in the world. A little bit of sideways action there on these very slippery trails. It takes everything in its stride. Honestly, any other 4x4, I might have looked at these slopes in fresh rain, clay, slippery surface and thought, maybe another day, but in this thing, have a crack. So some of the tricks I can pull in here are I've got front and rear locking differentials, center locking differential, and I have one of its absolute trump cards is a front anti-roll bar that you can disconnect. So you get even more front wheel articulation, which is really good on particularly nasty rock crawls and boulders. What this car is so good at, it's got a very short wheelbase, and with that extra articulation at each corner, it's unstoppable is a strong word to use in the four-wheel drive world, but this is one of the cars that comes closest to it. It really, that engine, I'm so surprised, it really doesn't break a sweat at all. I thought it'd be revving to the limiter and trying to find power like a petrol does, but it's behaving exactly like a diesel. It's just finding that torque at 2000 RPM and rolling with it. It's very impressive. The other thing I really like about the Wrangler is it requires you to do a little bit of the work. Like, you need to dial in a little bit of what you want. You know, you take something like a Volkswagen Amarok and it's literally got one button and you point and fire, which is great for people who want to perhaps don't have so much confidence off-road and just want to be able to hit the trail and not get stuck. But the Wrangler requires a little bit of, you know, baking your own cake. So I can pull up here and lock the rear differential, and that's particularly good for maintaining a good turning circle. Of course, if you lock the front diff, you're going to lose a lot of your steering and that lovely turning circle. But as I said, this has a 10-meter turning circle, and that is a huge advantage when you're off-road. And by just locking the rear and center diff, I maintain that amazing steering bragging rights. So I've got, I mean, once again, that was nothing to this car. But then I can turn into a real tight switchback like this, full lock, and it's only minimally trying to push ahead with that locked rear diff. So like I say, the beauty of this car is you can kind of choose your own adventure. You've got your recipe of ingredients of all your little tricks you can pull, and you can get the very most out of this vehicle by tailoring it to each particular section of the trail. And I can understand why this is such a satisfying car to drive off-road in some really challenging stuff. And also, let's not forget, it's got that trail rated badge on its flanks. That means this car has to have been able to done the entire Rubicon trail in off-the-shelf guise. And after doing some stuff out here, I can completely see why. So it's probably at this point I should be clear that I'm not trying to get this car stuck. Actually, truth is, even if I was trying, it probably wouldn't allow me to prove a point, because finding the limits of a vehicle like this take many, many days into some of Australia's most inaccessible places. And frankly, I haven't got the time to do that. But the other thing I don't have is a good recovery vehicle, because if I were to try and find its limits, I'd need something to get me out of a sticky situation if it happens. And the truth is, it's probably going to be another Wrangler. So let's revisit this story another time when we have more time, more space, and probably more Jeeps.
Don't let anyone tell you that a Wrangler isn't a bona fide off-roader, with the stats on paper alone to prove it. Approach angle of 44 degrees, departure angle 37 degrees, breakover angle 28 degrees, a wading depth of 760mm, and a ground clearance of 257mm. The Wrangler is an incredibly liberating vehicle, not just in the sense of the potential for adventure, because, as we know, there are plenty of Jeep owners who rarely exploit that, if ever. But with its lack of electronic this and autonomous that, and an unashamed dedication to traditional 4x4 mechanics, it's liberating from the normal trappings of modern car life. And the list of models that can offer that gets shorter by the month.
Unless your daily commute is directly over the Himalayas, the Jeep Wrangler doesn't really make any sense at all. And even as a weekend freedom machine, it's only slightly less absurd. But Wrangler fans, they don't care about any of that. This car is like a signed hardback copy instead of a Kindle. It's like 35mm film instead of an iPhone camera. Enthusiasts, they're prepared to make sacrifices for something that's pure and unique. And I'm one of them. That is the Jeep Wrangler Rubicon. It's one of the stupidest cars on the road, but off-road completely unstoppable. Is it the silliest car money can buy, or is it $86,000 well spent? Let us know in the comments below, and thanks for watching Car Sales.